Oh, 27 degrees and snowing. Nope. The Bernoulli effect. Venturi, liquid, air. Air coming in here, liquid coming from here. Magic happens out here. That's how a carburetor really works. That is a Venturi spraying fuel, which is water right now. Air coming in, fuel drawn up, spraying in the combustion chamber. Boom! All right, buddy, welcome back. Yeah. So, this is what we're really getting into today. I feel like I've done so much with the engine building, I almost want to apologize to you guys. I've built crazy rocket ship fast turbocharged engines, but probably a lot of you guys really would like to figure out the basics of how it even all happens. Is that true? Am I lying? Jerry and Steve and I, we were talking. We do this stuff every day. It's very normal to us. We just love horsepower. We love, Bernoulli. Mr. Bernoulli, he was amazing. I think it was Mr. Michael Bernoulli. He invented this back in the 1700s. 1700s, guys. I think the 1780s, 1730s. That's when he realized that vacuum moving through a Venturi. This, I've made it. You can't really see the inside. It's several fittings that I put together because this has a completely different purpose from what everything else does here on the table. I'll get to this here in a second, but this clearly shows that you don't need a fuel pump. If you have air coming in, it will draw the fuel from a tank, which can be below the fuel injector, not above it. Excuse me. Burp there. Fuel below the injector, it will draw it up, spray it out. Yeah, I got water on my table. And it comes out in a mist. It's not spraying out a jet of fuel. It's an atomized mist from the Venturi. I have this machined in here to where it necks down to a smaller spot where the fuel gets drawn in and then opens back up to where it sprays out the nozzle and tapers back down just so that I can actually put it into where we want to use it, which once again, I'll tell you here in a second. Took a while for me to figure this out. This was not an easy process. I can't tell you how many versions of this is. It's not like the man that invented the light bulb. I didn't make 2 million of them before I figured out the first one. It took me about 20. I made quite a few of these. And finally, I went to using brass pieces so I could just machine it. And everything's machined internally. I could take this all apart and show you, but it's a Venturi. It's pretty much, that's all that is. It's a Venturi. I'll put a picture up. A Bernoulli Venturi right here. Pulls fuel up, boom. But back to where we're going. Carburetor tuners. Yep, this is the carburetor I'm going to use on this one. Bolts on right here. That's going to make a bunch of horsepower. Love horsepower. Let me move my fuel source here for my jet engine fuel injector. It's for a jet engine. Carburetor. This is one of your very normal carburetors. Fuel on the bottom, slide comes up and down, opens the Venturi in there. So when the air comes in, it pulls the fuel up. The Venturi in the carburetor pulls the fuel from the bowl and allows it to enter the engine, which I'm actually holding it the wrong way. Air comes in here, pulls the fuel up, sprays it into the engine. And the best thing about a Venturi, it only works at engine vacuum. There's no fuel pressure. Fuel basically is leaking into the carburetor. My old boss, his definition of a carburetor was one of the best I think I've ever heard. Sorry if I'm shaking the table there. It's an organized fuel leak. It really is. Fuel is leaking through here into the engine at the correct rate at which the engine is pulling vacuum, which draws the correct amount as long as it's jetted correctly, which you can change all that with the jetting. So that's really the tunability. And this one I have, whoa, this one, I just tossed a slide out of. I have it pulled apart here. Let me just come over here so you guys can see real good. This here on the bottom, that's your float. The fuel comes in right here. That little nipple, the fuel comes in, comes to here. If the needle is shut, the fuel won't come in. If the needle's open, the fuel will enter, fill the bowl, fill the float bowl. When the float bowl is full, what you see the needle there? That's a drain needle. So if it overfills, whatever's extra drains out the bottom. That's okay. Need that to work at all times. So when the fuel is totally full, the jets are allowed to vacuum it up. This is your main jet right here. This is your idle jet, or low speed jet, high speed jet, if that's the way you want to think about it. Let me get my pointer here so I can get my finger out of there. One sec. And today we have a drill bit pointer. High speed fuel jet. Oh, let me get it up here. High speed fuel jet, low speed fuel jet. This will determine your idle and up to about a third throttle. From here is 2/3, or from a third all the way to the top. That's what your main jet controls. And if you guys can see in there, come in here, right in the middle there is where the main jet fuel comes through. That tube in the middle, I have the slide out so you guys can see straight down in there hopefully. That tube right there, that's the atomization tube. That goes down to the main jet, straight down. That's one tube. So the fuel comes in here, comes up to the atomization tube, gets atomized with air through the Venturi. And if you can see in here, the Venturi, air comes in here, comes in big, it necks down. Stays small through here and then starts to get bigger right as it comes into the engine. If you guys can see my bit there, see how it comes out? It's because of the Venturi. The Venturi in the carburetor is the magic. Carburetors only work because of the Venturi. Without a Venturi, you don't carburate. There's no carb tuning. And yeah, this is it's a Shang Wei straight from China. It's a mini bike carburetor. So yeah, this happens to be just a good old single barrel mini bike carburetor. No big deal. But a Venturi is a Venturi is a Venturi. It does not matter what type of carburetor it is. This is just a clear example to show you guys what's going on. And I'll show you here too, because this one is a slide with this big arm hanging out. See how it totally blocks off the entire inlet of air? That's the choke. What the choke does, it restricts the air and allows the engine vacuum to only pull fuel from the bottom end. So with the choke down, the fuel comes from the idle jet and the main jet. So you get extra fuel spraying in to help the engine start when it's cold. Cold engines don't like to start unless they get a little extra fuel. With fuel injection, that's all dialed into your computers. Carburetors don't need it. They just need a little, you have to restrict the air just a little bit so you get more fuel. Because when you restrict the air, that all your vacuum comes from your bowl. None of it comes from here. So you got to actually be careful on these older ones, because if you restrict all that air, you're getting a ton of fuel and it'll flood it real quick. So yeah. And regardless if it's a single, a dual, over here, excuse me, it's on my other workbench because this one, as you guys can see now, is it's full. And I kind of retuned stuff over here. Got my kiddo stuff blocked up. Got me a new full-size workbench. So yeah, came from my brother. He donated a little better table. So yeah, I got my wood over here so I can work on stuff. I like the wood because it soaks up oil. I don't get a huge oil mess over here on my clean table. 2-barrel carburetor. This happens to be a Ford. It's an older Ford 2-barrel from a Mustang. And it needs some serious work. If you guys can see up here, it's totally disconnected because the entire choke flap is gone. He was trying to turn a 2-barrel into a racing car with a stock intake that weighs about 4,000 pounds. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. But it's a good resto. I can bring that back to brand new, and somebody will be able to put a, that's a stock intake on their original small block in a Ford, and yeah, that's stock is good. So 2-barrel. If you guys can see down in there, I'll try and get that open. Actually, I know there's not much light over here, but that's a 2-barrel. And yeah, right there's a 4-barrel. This is what I use on my race bikes. Not 1, not 2, not 3. Yeah, all 4. And this right here is actually, that's an adjust-a-jet. I can adjust it here. It picks up fuel from here. And as long as this is above the fuel line, this right here will vacuum fuel out of here as long as it's in the airstream and it's on the vacuum side of the carburetor. And I didn't really realize under boost, I was pushing air back into here and into my bowl, and it was causing tuning problems, which is some of the issues I was having from the get-go with the original. You get this back over here. With the original setup on the 750 turbo bike, that was this set of carburetors. And I was still really trying to figure out many things because I never built that entire setup. Nobody had, so there was no instructions. I was trying to use these ancient carburetors that are purely mechanical, that if I had a problem, it was probably going to leak boost and not hold it too tight, so I was okay with that. But they didn't leak any boost, and I had to get the fuel right because, yeah, it was bad. But I ended up getting it figured out. Most of it was just down here on my bowls. The older Yamaha carburetors that I was used to didn't have bowl drains on them. The boost was coming out of my bowl drains all the way across. Once I blocked those off and that goes to my valve that I can control my bowl pressure with, that changed everything that day, and yeah, good to go. So, but these they're blocked off right here, all the way across, all 4 of them, because these are made for boost. They will still work naturally aspirated, but they work better with boost because these lines here pressurize the float bowls, and then it sprays the fuel in. Does not need the Venturi. It basically turns carburetors into mechanical fuel injectors. The mechanical portion of it is boost. It's air pressure that is filling the bowl and spraying the fuel up through the atomization tube and the main jet and the idle jet. And that's what allows it to work. And once again, it only works at vacuum or boost principles. So if I have 1 pound of boost, I have 1 pound of bowl pressure. But actually I use a pitot tube, which gives me a bit higher pressure. So in reality, I have 1.7 pounds of bowl pressure to 1 pound of boost pressure. My fuel pressure needs to be higher at all times. So, yeah. We can put that over there. I know the turbo science adds a lot to carburetors, but it can clearly be done. And really what I'm working on now is something completely different, which is kind of what I've tested with the turbo bike I have now because I can. There's one thing I haven't done yet, which is I can't really test 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work if we get it all plumbed in and done. Which this clearly illustrates to me now. Once I finally figured this out, I realized that with enough pressure coming in, I can vacuum as much fuel as I need. I don't need fuel pressure. I don't need fuel pumps. Make sense? There won't be a fuel pump. It's going to work under gravity or air pressure. If it's not gravity, it'll be air pressure because it might go real fast and gravity doesn't work good. It works good, kind of, but when you're going fast, stuff changes. So, yeah. But back to where we were. Carb tuning. And yeah, this to me, it's not a carburetor, it's a carb tuner. Sure, it's a carburetor. Air enters it with fuel, and yeah, it's a carb tuner. You can do whatever you want with these things. If you want to boost a turbocharged rocket ship, you can. It's all in the science. Just got to figure it out. What this is, guys, this carburetor here is completely different. And I kind of want to show you guys this one today because it is 100% different than everything else you'll probably ever see. And let me just get it popped apart here. And hold for a commercial, please. Yeah. So, 100% different. Just put this is the float hanging from the top. The float does hang. That's normal. That goes there. Okay, yep. Only goes in one way, just like that. So your air bleed is lined up here. That's your air bleed for your idle set right here. You set your idle with this one, or these carburetors are different. This is the Briggs & Stratton carburetor. It's an upside down carburetor. It's not a downdraft, it's an updraft carburetor that breathes in from the side. Yeah, it's different. Way different. Let me get my drill bit here. So air comes in the bottom, comes up through. This is where your intake bolts on to go into your engine. This would normally be just like that. They work pretty good, actually, but the problem with them is they're not throttleable. They're made to be tuned into an RPM and left there. They're for, continuous use engines, or, duty engines is what we call them in the trade industry. It's a duty engine carburetor that's just made to just, or, doesn't matter. You can tune it in. That's the cool thing about these carburetors. This is the atomization tube. It has to come out for the carburetor to come apart. I'll just show you guys. That's the bowl. The bowl is just a float bowl. Nothing fancy. Air comes in. Fuel stays in there. Go here and show you guys this part. It's a little more to it. Fuel comes in right here. Comes across this channel. Hold this correctly and get my pointer here. My big old finger's blocking everything. Fuel comes in here, comes across here, comes down to here. Our needle is right here. So the float, closes our needle. Close, open, no big deal. So when the fuel comes in, it fills the bowl. Fills the bowl here. And the intake is not connected to the bowl. This is the fuel bowl around the outside. So the fuel bowl gets full here. And set that down for a second. I'll show you. The little transfer hole right there. If you can see it from the bottom, there's a little hole here. The fuel comes down to here. The fuel fills this well totally because the atomization tube comes up from the bottom into the venturi, into the carb throat. So that's your main jet comes in here. Let me just go ahead and get that screwed in a little more here. There we go. Actually, I don't think that's still not quite enough because what controls, oh, there we go. Since these are a continuous duty carburetor, you want to be able to just control the fuel all the time. And you can control the air by changing, you know, your vent here by letting more air in. But on these two, you can actually control your main jet. This piece that goes in, that's your main jet adjustment. So however much fuel gets metered down into here and sucked into the carburetor, you can adjust that right here. There's really no jets. That's the cool thing about these carburetors. You don't have to change jets. You adjust this metering rod, which adjusts the fuel to your atomization tube, which adjusts the fuel that gets drawn into your airstream. And you can't put these back together with the tube in there. The tube has to come off for you to be able to put it back together. So if you're going to take one apart, pull that tube out first, and yeah. But they're cool. To clean them, you pull the tube out, clean your stuff, and you're good. No biggie to work on. And up here, the air that comes in here through your bleed, that comes in right here. So that allows the engine to idle with the, you can essentially idle it. If you look in there, you see the cutaway in the throttle blade. There's a little bitty cutaway in the bottom. There it is. See the cutaway? That cutaway is metered with your air orifice here, so you can let air leak in to adjust your run, your RPM essentially. You adjust your main idle here. That's your main idle, so you get it to where you want it closely. And you adjust right here to get your fine adjust, which these things are super cool because no other carburetor does that. Really, that I've ever seen. These things they're pretty cool low carb. So, but they have a problem with the throttleability. They don't like to be just wide open and then shut because you see it doesn't even seal that great because it doesn't need to. They're meant to just leak air. So, yeah. That's good. Put the goodies over here so I can put it all back together. And kind of what else I want to show you guys. Hopefully me sitting down is a little more peaceful too. We're not all the lights up in the... Sorry about that. Somebody said something about nitromethane in a supercharger. I happen to love nitromethane. I love Kenny Bernstein. He's about my favorite person on the planet of Earth. I've watched him go 300 miles an hour several times. Oh, man. Watched him go 306 for the first time ever. Watching him go 300 miles an hour will move a person. When he leaves the line, well, when he used to, everything's different now. That was back when quarter mile was still quarter mile racing. They went 1,320 feet. Now they only go 1,000 foot, whatever. But yeah, it moved me watching him. I used to spend a lot more time at the racetrack. Kind of wish I could nowadays, but you know, life, so yeah. But I love nitromethane. I love superchargers. I love turbochargers. I love engines. I love carburetors. Yes. Very much so. And this one was kind of a donation that came to me, and it wasn't in good shape. It needed a full rebuild. And I did. Because I realized what it was. It's actually it was on a Carmanguia. It's a supercharger. It's a Judson supercharger for a Volkswagen. Let me get things set up here. I'll show you what's up. Yeah. Okay, let's see if this works. Got my drill. Got to charge the battery. You get stuff out of the way here so we don't get nothing sucked up in here. Got a little paper on here so we can see if we're making boost. And let me make sure I'm spinning the right way. I got an arrow on here now, so we're spinning this way. Okay, here we go. Whoa. Yeah. See if I can get this dialed into where you guys can actually see that. Right there, it actually says VW Gia, I'm pretty sure. But you can see it's a Judson supercharger, belt drive supercharger. Normally it would bolt on the engine here. Normally this would go on the engine and your carburetor would bolt on right here. So you'd have a carburetor sucking air into the supercharger, compressing it, and then blasting it into your Karma Gia or your VW. Can you imagine having this thing on a VW? Those VWs, they only came with, like 38 horsepower or something. That thing would almost double it. I think those superchargers, it's all depending on how fast you spin it. And you see there, I'm only spinning it at, let's see what this thing does. That was almost full throttle on here. And I think it does, yeah, 5,000 RPM. This is 2,500 in first, 5,000 in second. So that was about 5,000 RPM, which I think these can go to about 7,000, 7 or 8,000, no problem. And let me just kind of move things here a little bit and I'll kind of show you guys. I had to completely rebuild this supercharger. And luckily the parts, some of the parts are still available. Some of the parts aren't. But in here, if you heard it, when I spin it, it sounds like an engine because it's a sliding vane supercharger. There's one shaft that comes through it, the main shaft that spins. And if you hear the vanes, they're on a sliding shaft. So they slide in and out in the case. The case is offset to one side so that it's bigger on this side. It grabs the air when it slings it out and it pushes it out the bottom. And if you listen, hear the vane sliding back down. There's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. So, belt drive, supercharger, carburetor, somehow bolted up here to where we can get the boost from the bottom into the engine. Probably not with this one because I got plans for this one already. But I got this big old nasty 8-horse sitting here that could maybe get some nitromethane and a supercharger. I've studied nitromethane. I know Don Garlitz. He's one of my buddies. When I first tried to go 200, I realized you need a 200-mile-an-hour buddy. I went and talked to Don about going 200. So after meeting Don and talking to him for a little bit, he realized right away I was not your normal visitor. I've talked to him at the racetrack. I've talked to him in Ocala. Been down to Ocala a couple times. Hot Rod Museum down there is amazing. Go check it out. And go meet Don. He's getting old. He's not getting any younger. But he was the one that taught me. I wanted to go talk to him because he didn't have fuel injection. He didn't have any of the new stuff. He ran nitro through carburetors, 8 carburetors on a V8. He eventually went down to less than that, but because he was running them on a supercharger, and everything was a bit different, but it was still tuning the same. And I wanted to learn about all that. Who else is going to teach you that? Might as well go to the master. Nitro runs at 4-to-1. 4-to-1. 4 parts air, 1 part fuel. Yeah. Gasoline runs at 14-to-1. So Much different. With nitro, you need way more fuel to support all that horsepower. Makes sense. But he was doing it with carburetors. So, yeah. And for him, it was just drill the jets out, make everything flow way better, crank a bunch of timing into it, and make gobs of horsepower. But there was still a lot more than just that to it. And he taught me a lot of that. I wish I could go back and learn even more. But I think I'm good to where, well, no, I'm not good, but I wish I could learn more. So, yeah. What this comes down to. I've built several jet engines, guys. If you look back to one of my very first videos many years ago, that was one of my experimental jet engines in my shop. It pushed me across my shop. I was using a vacuum in reverse, blowing air, basically a vacuum to blow air into it to spit it up to start it and to boost my combustion chamber. It did. I ran that engine several times. It fired off. It was all good. Learned a lot with that engine, quite a bit. It was running way too hot, was the culprit with that engine. So I realized it could never really work, took it apart, was starting to work on stuff, and then life changed and I kind of lost my shop because I got in a big accident. So, but yeah, we're back now. And now I have this. I didn't have this before. I was trying to use kerosene and propane. Use propane to start it because I can spray propane into my combustion chamber. It fires up the jet engine, and it's more safe to start it on because I don't have liquid fuel spraying out of a non-lit jet engine. Not good. Because if it does explode, it blows up your jet engine pretty much instantly. So, yeah, don't do that. And my jet engines are turbochargers. I use turbos. They have a cold side and hot side. You blow my jet combustion chamber blows into the hot side of the turbo, spins it up. The cold side reboots the air coming into the combustion chamber. It's a sealed unit with exhaust coming out of the turbine. And, air coming in the turbo, in the inlet on the cold side, hot coming out the back. It works really good. My last one pushed me across my shop. I was amazed. I'm holding my vacuum. I'm holding the fuel supply. I got a propane tank. I got the vacuum. I got my foot on the cart with the jet engine because it's on a cart too because I didn't know it was going to move. And it started blowing me across my shop because I was spraying kerosene and propane, but I had the kerosene in if you guys know a brake clean jug from a shop, it's a jug you can fill full of brake clean and pressurize with air. I had kerosene in there. And I had it plumbed down into my engine. But I didn't have this. I was spraying way too much fuel into it. And that sucker lit off and the cops came. Yeah, it was nuts. The cop was even like, wait, what, a jet engine? Like, yeah. He saw it and was like, man, keep that under wraps. It was late that night. It was about 8 o'clock. He said, before 5, you're good. I said, no problem. So I know what needs to happen. I know how to build the combustion chambers. I've built 4 of them now, but none of them have really worked to the point of where I want to do it to. And I'll toss a picture in here at the end of really what all this is coming to, guys. When I say that there's way more to come, it's because there is way more to come that I don't even know yet because I haven't built it. I've kind of designed it. I've built several prototypes. But this one's going to be a little bit different. And it's going to have Mr. Bernoulli. So, way more comes, I always say. Like, share, and subscribe. We're going to build some cool stuff. And when in doubt, figure it out. The truth will set you free. And we're going to build a rocket ship jet engine and put it on something really fast. Thanks for watching, guys. Way more to come. Let's ride.